broadcast. My family are listening to music, so you might be able to hear music in the background, and maybe I'll be exercising to it because this is a world of quarantine and post-quarantine self-care so that we stay healthy. Not in any kind of shady Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of way where we insist that weightlifting is what prevents COVID, because it doesn't. Sure, pre-existing conditions can make it more likely that you'll have a serious case of COVID, but many people with no pre-existing conditions, including many young people, have found themselves with long COVID symptoms, or even in very serious cases requiring intubation, hospitalization, and people have died. Healthy, fit people have died from COVID as well. So let's all hope that everybody keeps taking care as much as they can, because the new variants that are increasing in prevalence are not only more transmissible, but are also more lethal. And it's just a question of holding on with those measures to safeguard the population until that balance is achieved of having a dominance of vaccinated people. Oh, whoops, I haven't clicked on the comment section. Hello, welcome to my broadcast. Willie says hello, and John says hi. Hi, John. Sorry to be broadcasting late. I hope some people are here and that I'm collecting the night owls who can't sleep anyway. I don't want to be interfering with anybody's actual sleeping patterns. So just as a warm-up, here is a video from Google, lasts 1 minute, and it's about the promise of vaccines. I found it on Twitter, and it'll fit nicely in the screen. I'm going to exercise while it's on.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bienvenue à la Corée.
Oh, let's come back to the beginning. So I hope that was enjoyable for people. It's a bit of a poignant, emotional journey to watch all of those Google queries you type in during a period of quarantine. Willie says, I'm in the West. The West of what, Willie? The West of North America, the West of Canada, the West of Australia. Let me know. And in the meantime, the topic I ran with today was, will Matt Gaetz be indicted for various crimes? Just because I know, while it's kind of a grotty conversation to have, it's uncomfortable and awkward to talk about someone who's likely committed crimes in relation to sex trafficking young women who qualify as children, underage women or girls. Older teens. The suggestion has been made that Matt Gaetz and his friend Joel Greenberg worked together to coordinate falsified identification documents. Joel Greenberg was in a building showing Matt Gaetz these things after hours. And we only know that happened because one of Joel Greenberg's colleagues, now Joel Greenberg is an elected tax collector for Seminole County in Florida. And one of his colleagues came to work on Monday and found that there were driver's licenses strewed all over the office. And the thing with driver's licenses is people bring in their driver's licenses that have expired to be cut up at the tax collector's office, evidently. So turns out Joel Greenberg wasn't cutting them up, and he was repurposing them to give them to young women so that they could have new documents made for them to help them purport to be older than they literally were. So let's see, we can bring up a Daily Beast article. Daily Beast, Joel Greenberg, Matt Gaetz. So this is an article that was published 2 days ago, and I think it's worthwhile having a look at, just because some of the text messages exchanged with Joel Greenberg were captured, and they indicate reasonably persuasive evidence that Matt Greenberg was in a Florida tax collection office after hours. Phil's here. Nice. So this article itself is called "The Creepy, Disturbing Case That Ensnared Matt Gaetz." So there's a picture of Matt Gaetz, probably from a couple of years ago. He's looking fairly orange, as befits a devoted adherent of Trumpism. And just trying to scroll down. Oh, look, here is a picture. Let's see if I'm sharing the screen yet. No, I'm not. So let's share the screen and see what you can see. I might make it the whole screen for a minute. So you can see Roger Stone, Matt Gaetz, and Joel Greenberg. Joel Greenberg is the person on the right. He's the person who posted this picture to Twitter. You remember Roger Stone. He's the person who was indicted for various things, but who managed to escape a prison sentence because he was pardoned by the former president. Oh no, it's not letting me see this particular article because it's members only. It wasn't members only yesterday. Oh, we still got to see the picture of Roger Stone. Now, from what I remember reading that article yesterday, there were screenshots. Let's see if I can find another reference that has those screenshots. Joel, what text? Joel Greenberg text messages. So the colleague who showed her text messages to authorities, she's a colleague who challenged Joel Greenberg as to why there were all of these driver's licenses strewn around the office. And she said, "Did you visit the office on the weekend?" So let's see if we are able to reproduce those text messages here. The Daily Beast was the first to break the story when they got their hands on screenshots of text messages sent from Greenberg's phone. Yep. Oh, good. Okay, I found it. That's a good thing. I like to be able to do what I'm suggesting. Oh, Natalie's here saying the justice system in America will be defined one way or the other with the Chauvin decision. True, it will be a historic moment. I don't want to say it defines America, but it will to a large degree, in that the injustice it will reveal if Chauvin is acquitted will definitely have huge repercussions for America. I mean, many people are aware that there's different tiers of justice in the United States, and that there's certain areas where injustice is concentrated, namely whenever people attempt to prosecute white people for crimes against Black Americans. So there's some white police officers who beat up an undercover officer who was Black, and they were acquitted today, I believe, illustrating that it's difficult to obtain a conviction for crimes against Black people even when it's a police officer. All right, so here are the text messages, just to share that with you. I might make it the full screen for a minute. So this is an article reporting on the Daily Beast reporting. So if you can see here, it says, "Amy, is there any way to assist Or they haven't blacked out her name. Goodness gracious. Amy, is there any way to assist one of our congressmen in getting an emergency replacement ID by Tuesday PM? His was lost yesterday and he's got a flight Tuesday. Doesn't have any other form of ID currently on him. Sorry to bother you on Sunday. Who is it and what is his date of birth? And she asks Gold Star. I wonder what Gold Star means. But the point is, it's essentially illegal to produce ID for people without them going through the proper procedures. And I was informed of this by the Daily Beast reporting. On learning of the conversations, the Secret Service, who were investigating Greenberg, directed employees to print out the full conversation in January 2020 using AT&T records. The records were then delivered to the Secret Service, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and an unnamed federal agency. So these are the agencies that have been investigating Matt Gaetz's close friend, Joel Greenberg, since January 2020. That's a long time. Matt Gaetz says he doesn't have any intention to quit. But yes, and those are not the text messages I was referencing that show that Joel Greenberg was asked by a colleague if he was in the office on the weekend, and he admitted via text message to this employee and said, yes, he was. He was just showing Matt Gaetz how things worked after hours on the weekend, and then had driver's licenses strewn around instead of in the shredding bin. So these are all important things to keep in mind, because Republicans are masters of escalating fake outrage about things, so much so that you could probably take a lie detector test and go, are you really that angry about some knockoff Nike shoes that purportedly celebrate Satan? Or are you angrier about, say, an attempt to overthrow the government via the insurrection on January the 6th? John asks that Gaetz is a sleaze. Why does Marjorie Taylor Greene stand by him? And I think you would have to say that people who've joined the Republican Party in recent times are pursuing power at the expense of principle. So it shouldn't be altogether surprising that their principles are not consistent, that if they have the principle of believing QAnon conspiracies and being concerned about children being trafficked, that they entirely choose not to believe that one of their allies is being investigated for trafficking a 17-year-old girl and paying her in exchange for sex and just generally behaving in ways that violate state and federal laws. Yes, John, you say she's supposedly against pedophilia, but she is not working from a place of principle. She is working from a narrative that appeals to a certain gullible subset of the American population that have emotional trigger buttons about, yes, oppose people who traffic children, but it has no resonance in her soul or in her character. It's something she says to get voted into office. And when voted into office, she'll continue saying it because that is the foundation on which her support lies. So I'm sure she'll keep talking about how opposed she is to trafficking, but just not in the instance of Matt Gaetz being a likely trafficker, because she'll be able to compartmentalize that and say he's a Trump supporter, he's like me, with the noise making and the fake devotion to country. That's used to cover up a devotion to perpetuating white supremacist hierarchies where possible. Bernie asks if I saw militia training on 7 News last night in the USA. No, I didn't. Are these pro-Trump white supremacist militias? Because I wouldn't be altogether surprised if they were still going on, even in the absence of a Trump presidency. They still have various ideologies to organize around, namely opposition to socialism. And look, I did find a very good article on Substack by Noah Smith about tankies being Stalin supporters. Now, they're relatively rare in a purely numerical sense, but they're noisy on Twitter. And their very existence is something that the far right will always seize on in order to represent their conversation and their ideologies as representative of the entire left and of Democrats, etc. Crazy pro-Stalin, pro-Chinese Communist Party people whose hatred of modernity and America and capitalism and corporatism has evolved into this monomaniacal rage which propels them into an admiration for one of capitalism's enemies, Joseph Stalin, who orchestrated the death of millions of people and the torture and forcible re-education of millions more. Stalin is long gone, but if you don't know that Stalin fans are having a mild resurgence on the internet, particularly on Twitter, I will share evidence of that with you. Now, there's two different arguments about why they're surging a little bit at the moment in terms of presence. It could be that they want a new way to distinguish themselves, because a lot of the more rabidly communist, socialist types are currently disavowing Bernie Sanders for not being sufficiently possessed of ovarian fortitude. Yes, Stalin is long gone, so is Lenin, and so is Mao and Mussolini, and so is Hitler, but you still have neo-Nazis. So there's a modern drawing of a cartoon with hammer, sickle and hammer on it. So this is a little bit of history. In 1956, the Soviet Union invaded Hungary in order to crush a revolution against the Soviet-supported regime. Some members of the Communist Party of Great Britain supported the invasion. These pro-Soviet leftists were derisively labelled tankies by other British leftists for the tanks that were used against the Hungarians. 12 years later, the Soviets invaded Czechoslovakia to suppress the Prague Spring, and this time, a smaller fraction of hardline British communists supported it. The term tanky was again applied. Stalinism and red fascism are generally synonymous terms. So yes, it'd be fun to just call them red fascists, but we have to work on our arguments so they're more potent than merely attaching colors to people, because of course a lot of the communists online call Biden supporters blue MAGA and refuse to get excited about anything that the Biden administration is accomplishing, namely over 20 million Americans immunized over the last 7 days, or the delivery of $1,400 checks to most people. There's still some holdup with Social Security recipients getting their stimulus checks, but hopefully those obstacles will be cleared sooner rather than later. There's so much purging that needs to be done of Trump appointees who are still causing trouble. So Trump appointees causing trouble in the Social Security Department. Neo-Nazi Sebastian Gorka is still appointed to some board of education, etc. So we've covered where the term tankies arose for in a historical sense. But yes, tanky does not apply to any extreme leftist, because there's other kinds of extreme leftists, anarchists, super passionate Bernie bro types who have been so manipulated by psychological influence operations on the internet that they're still really angry at people for voting for Hillary Clinton and believe that things were stolen from Bernie. There's Marxist-Leninists, who are sometimes called Trotskyists after Lenin Trotsky, and various other little lefty factions who often choose each other as their own worst enemies. They're much more likely to be talking about various traitorous lefty movements or complaining about how AOC is inadequately ideologically pure than you'll ever see them mention Matt Gaetz or Donald Trump or anything like that. They're very consumed by a desire to ideologically purify the left. And the fact that they usually lose does not matter to them, because losing is a very comfortable position for them. They like losing, they like being the underdog. Yes, Gorka is a fascist. Very true. Bernie didn't make any further points about the militia training, so I should be more direct with my request. Bernie, do you want to tell us some more about the militia training so that we can cover that topic as well? Some of the Canadians are very ill. In the NHL Vancouver team called Canucks, some confirmed to have the aggressive Brazil P1 variant. So they've got 14 players with COVID-19, and the team is in rough shape apparently, with practices and games cancelled. So I'm just saw that, so I'm bringing it up to highlight that. All right. I'm going to play another video, and this video is of interest. It, trigger warning, contains some footage of the insurrection, the sacking of the Capitol, and I'm playing it because it's a new ad that's being put out by Republicans for Accountability. So that's the RAP project, and Republican Representative Paul Gosar's siblings. I think he's one of 7 children in their family, and previously the other 5 or 6 made an ad when he was running for Congress again, urging people not to vote for him. But it's hard to overcome the partisan composition of a nation. You can erode a partisan tally, but it's hard to completely overturn it. And evidently he had such a strong margin of reddish tinge of his district that he still was able to get in, despite the very cogent disavowal of his character and practices by his own siblings, by 5 of them. So this is the ad that they've made now to urge that there be accountability for the role that Representative Paul Gosar played in inciting an insurrection on American soil.
There is no one member of Congress more responsible for the attack on the Capitol than Congressman Paul Gosar. There is no...
Hang on, I've just realized I haven't clicked share yet. Dun, dun, dun. Shall I make it the whole screen? Yes, I will. Okay, ready, guys?
One member of Congress more responsible for the attack on the Capitol than Congressman Paul Gosar. My name is Jennifer Gosar.
My name is Tim Gosar.
My name is David Gosar. I am Paul Gosar's brother.
Gosar is my brother.
My brother.
And he should be held accountable for all the lies he told.
That led to the attack on the Capitol
On January 6th.
immediately following Fox News calling Arizona for Biden.
There were rallies outside Maricopa County Clerk's office.
And Paul was right in the middle of them.
He's saying things like, we're going to fight to the bitter end. This is our Alamo.
This is our Alamo.
Paul's one of the first people to tell the big lie about Dominion voting machines.
Dominion seems to be set with changing Republican votes to Democrat.
And he tried to sell that lie every chance he could.
Dominion.
Paul helped organize the Stop the Steal rallies.
Ali Alexander boasted about how he and Paul Gosar were some of the integral architects of the January 6th insurrection.
I was the person who came up with the January 6th idea with Congressman Gosar.
Everyone that was a part of that insurrection needs to be held accountable, and absolutely the organizers even more so.
How would it be just if the rabble pays the consequence, the ringleaders pay no consequence? We can't have a two-tier system of justice in this country.
He should have criminal consequences, and if he's found guilty, he should go to jail.
Paul Gosar doesn't support democracy. Sign the pledge that you won't support him at accountability.gop.
Okay, so that's a good ad. I'll get myself back on the screen. So I think it's very important that there are Republicans, or former Republicans, pushing for accountability, because Republicans would very much like to gloss over the insurrection and return to the status quo of media hyper-devotion to a false form of neutrality, where they privilege liars by virtue of presenting lies and at least good faith efforts to represent the truth as being equally valid, and they present it for your consumption. So Fox News, that just foregrounds and privileges the lies, has a very powerful effect on the American population, which is very corrosive to American democracy. So I like that ad because it says Paul Gosar is anti-democracy. And that's a key thing to remember because people keep noting, rightly, that the Republicans' voter suppression push is disproportionately targeting the voting practices of Black Americans. But it's not enough to call it racist. What they're doing is anti-democratic. So we'll call it both. But I guess particularly we'll focus on the violated rights of Black voters who are having to deal with longer lines, statistically proven longer lines if you're a Black voter living in a majority Black community by significant figures, and that it's been criminalized to hand out water and food to people waiting in line. So I would also like to share with everybody a short clip of Pete Buttigieg, who is cool and very good at speaking with Fox. So even though sometimes we disapprove of people even legitimizing Fox with an appearance, when you see Pete Buttigieg do it, then you know it's a good thing. So let's see, everybody might have gone to bed, which is fine. I'm just quickly going to share Pete Buttigieg so that we can all practice how we can do this ourselves. He manages to refute Republican talking points without even drawing breath. So Republicans are trying to say that, look, it's $400 billion on home care for elderly and the disabled, $650 billion on electric grid improvements, broadband internet access, water systems, and $620 billion on transportation infrastructure, $174 billion to spur development and sales of electric vehicles. So that sounds like it's probably accurate, but they're just putting it all up there on screen and then watch what talking point they lead with. Let me just check that I've got this lined up. Not yet. Okay. Okay, here we go.
We crunch the numbers. We'd find that 5.5% of the $2 trillion, well, 5.6 of the $2 trillion proposal is only dedicated to roads and bridges. Why is that?
Well, we're talking about roads and bridges. We're talking about rail and transit. We're talking about airports and ports. As you mentioned, we're talking about things like the grid. I don't know why anybody would say it's a mistake to invest in the grid after what we just witnessed in Texas. We saw U.S. citizens living in Texas melting snow in their bathtubs to be able to flush their toilets in the United States of America. That is unacceptable. So yes, infrastructure includes energy infrastructure. You know what else is part of infrastructure now? Broadband. I'm proud of the fact, even though it's a little outside my lane on the transportation side, I'm proud of the fact that we're going to finally get broadband out to every American, because we know, especially in rural areas, how much that's cutting people off from opportunity. Good infrastructure planning is always about looking to the future. You know, railroads weren't part of infrastructure until we built them. You know, I'm sure in the Eisenhower area, they weren't thinking about things like broadband. They were still working on electrification, which would have sounded newfangled in its time. Now it's time to prepare for the future. And millions of jobs that will be created by the bill are because this bill to the future.
I don't know if that just paused for you guys. Let's check. All right, well, I'll put it back. Internet being a little funky. Still here if you can hear me. So what I'm doing is bring my back on screen. Here. Just name more. Internet. Moment. Oh, there we go. I'm here. All right. Now, to emphasize jobs and emphasize that there will deliver broadband internet access to people, especially in rural areas with a barrier to opportunity. And I think that highlights especially rural areas where there's strength of the Democratic Party, because Democrats legitimately help people regardless of what party they belong to. They're very much driven by delivering policy in a utilitarian manner that helps a number of people. Whereas Republicans in office are driven to increase partisan maximum division, because irrational partisan loyalty is what keeps people voting for them. So they take sides with tribes. So that is their weakness. Their strength is that they will lie with a straight face, and that complements that works well in tandem with the failings of modern free press in terms of over devotion to so-called neutrality, which creates a lot of false equivalence. Sheldon's here, and Sheldon says the administration will drag the petulant Republicans into the future while they kick and scream like children. True. It looks like that's purporting to be true. Ahead of the CDC, deaths aren't formally due to the increased transmissibility and lethality of some of the COVID variants. Remembering that those variants have flourished in conditions where governments have pursued a non-interference strategy, let it go, free market, small government way of dealing with a pandemic. Small government, that is to say, an inadequate or absent response to challenges for public health. So what I'm going to do now is bring up an article from Microbe TV. They've got a little video, and they say this episode that I'm going to play a little bit features news about the mRNA being demonstrated 100% effective in 12-year-olds. News, because key to containing this includes being able to immunize at least 12-year-olds for a segment of the child population. FDA has advanced against virus, being able to kill you after tests, awesome. And dexterity COVID-19 saliva nucleic acid from Amazon is potentially being considered. So we'll listen to the episode. Let's see how much time it takes. I'm hanging out with my family. Oh, this is a long episode. Just watch it, see how it may not work very well with internet. And it's very good, Sheldon, to be on YouTube. Definitely helps. I had a very vigilant YouTube troll the other day who ran hack because I was talking about George Floyd and his trial, the trial of chauvinist works really quite well, but chauvinism focus is an hostility towards black people is the focus of. I'm not going to call it because it didn't angry, very purposeful and deliberate his action. His refutation or be torturously murdered. Witnesses who with trauma and is successfully into George Floyd's life. Just theft occurring slowly our existence to be snuffed out. The unwillingness there to stop murdering someone or him, reconsider aggressive around on George's neck for 2 minutes after he had gone entirely limp. And then he was fighting and different angles. There's some point at which the liquids to be eruption. I'm sorry, Sheldon, what I do
this week in Virology, the podcast about viruses, the kind that make you sick. From Microbe TV, this is TWIV, This Week in Virology, episode 738, recorded on April 1st, 2021. I'm Vincent Draccaniello, and you're listening to the podcast all about viruses. Joining me today from New York, Daniel Griffin.
Hello, everyone.
This is update number 56. What is the situation this week, Daniel?
It's not good. I'm going to go, let me just go right into that, and then I'll give my quotation. So I have to say, I'm getting tired. This has really been a tough year, and it's disappointing. We've been asking people, just give us a little more time. And Dr. Jay Varma, he's a senior advisor for public health at City Hall here in New York. And I'm going to quote him. He said, "The term I've been using is high plateau." And I think that's what this is. We're on this high plateau. The numbers are not going down. If anything, the numbers of new cases are climbing. Number of deaths are sitting at a very unacceptable high. This is not good. We are going to get through this in the United States with vaccines, but at, I think, an unacceptable number of loss and unacceptable number of people sick and dead and I'm going to say disabled after this. So not good. I have to say, if you're not frustrated, if you're not upset, you're not paying attention.
That's true. If you're not frustrated and you're not upset, you're not paying attention. So I wonder how the internet's going now, if it's any better. And my apologies for its failings. So yes, he used an important term, not just the amount of death, not just the amount of loss, but also the amount of disability, the people with impaired cardiac function, the people with impaired kidney, renal function, the people who have the long COVID symptoms and impairments that impact on their ability to work, impact on their quality of life, impact on their ability to support their family, whether it be paid work or unpaid work. So I am in favor of vaccine passports because, as many people point out, you need to demonstrate some level of vaccination for your children before they are able to attend school. And that's mostly accepted by the bulk of the population. There's some places you need to be vaccinated before you can obtain a visa to travel to another country. It's a condition of, whether it's a condition of departure or arrival, I don't know. But I know that people often have said, I'm going to Africa and I've got my shots. Maybe that's not compulsory. Sheldon says it's somewhat improved at this time. This is good. But I am going to go away and dance with my kids soon because they're listening to music with their father, and could be a family healthy exercise activity, trying to fit in more wait time, more incidental exercise. So I will say goodbye, but it is to be hoped that the investigation of Matt Gaetz continues. The promising details are that it's an investigation that began under Bill Barr. Bill Barr loves smoothing the path for Trumpism and white supremacy. He helped with Iran-Contra. He's helped Republicans avoid accountability at many stages of his career in public service. He serves Republican donor interests, I would imagine. But yes, so if Bill Barr didn't feel it necessary to quash the investigation into Matt Gaetz, if he was briefed on it and didn't take any action to stop that investigation from progressing, then it's to be hoped that it will be allowed to progress until its natural resolution, namely Matt Gaetz being indicted and charged and dealt with by the legal system in a fair and reasonable fashion. Because it's not okay to traffic girls. It's not okay to traffic underage girls. It's not okay to show naked pictures of women on your phone to your congressional colleagues without the consent of the women. A lot of the things that Matt Gaetz does is not okay. And I don't know, I still want to be part of a movement that opposes this type of recklessness with democracy and recklessness with the rule of law and recklessness with public health. And I'm always looking for ways to be more effective, to use my time as best I can to be part of a movement for decency, for democracy, to serve others, and to help us all understand each other better, because I think understanding progresses our ability to deal in a responsible and effective way. So if anybody ever has any ideas, I have a tendency of screenshotting people on the internet who make comment on the way they've helped convert other people to getting their vaccinations. So I screenshotted arguments they say they've used that have persuaded people in their social orbit, social or professional orbit. So what kind of resource? I might post them on my website. I have a website, davcat43. I'm thinking of turning that into more of a public health post page or a personal health post page where I write about what I'm doing to try and stay physically and emotionally healthy in the response still of surging fascism around the globe. Sheldon says, one by one, we are draining the swamp. He also says Gaetz is toast. It's a matter of time. He will be sent packing. It does seem like there might be an undeniable amount of physical evidence linking him to the crimes that his friend Joel Greenberg is being charged for. Look, I had hopes that an Australian politician was going to be charged because he was accused of stalking and harassing a few of his female constituents. And then, this is in Australia, and then somebody noted on his Facebook page that he had been forced by some business owners to delete a photo that he took of one of their employees who was bending over, loading up a small bar fridge with drinks, and that he had gone and taken a photo of this woman's bottom, and they found that to be unacceptable and stepped up and asked him to delete the photo from his phone, and he complied. So there was a comment on this man's Facebook page saying, I remember what you did, you pervert. I remember when you took a photo of one of our employees bending over and we made you delete the photo. And he said, yeah, it was supposed to be funny, but your response made it awkward. So he admitted to taking the photo and that it was deleted and that there was a moment of awkwardness whilst that went down. And it happened a few years ago, the woman having heard this public outcry about, why would we have an elected official who commits a crime of taking a photo up a woman's skirt? So she ended up going to the police together with one of the witnesses from the incident to say, yep, this photo was taken of me without my consent. And even though he deleted it, it's, still criminal what he did. And the Australian police have determined that there's not enough evidence to pursue investigation of a crime. And they've ascertained that the woman was wearing shorts. So some people, you can still see their underpants through their shorts if you bend over near their bottom while they're bending over, which is still apparently what this elected Australian Congress member did. So I just want to let you know that it is frustrating sometimes when people who are complicit with power hierarchies and don't want to rock the boat and disturb the thin electoral majority margin of a conservative government in power, then you don't always get the justice that you're really expecting and hoping for. Paul's here and says, good morning. Sheldon notes that there's lots of vaccine now available in Florida and all adults over 16 can have a COVID-19 vaccine, which is really great. I'm going to leave on that positive note. I'm not running away from you, Paul. I'm just letting you know that the time for my broadcast has come to an end. Thanks for the conversation, everybody. I didn't go into tankies as much as I thought I would, and I still haven't touched on this really big, important topic, which is covered in a New Yorker article written by Jane Meyer. Maybe I'll just quickly bring that up before I go so that people can have a look. New Yorker. Because they want to block the passage of the voting legislation that the Democrats are bringing to the Senate. And that legislation would reduce the impact of dark money. It would reduce the ability of billionaires to buy a disproportionately large influence on elections by buying audience attention, by paying for lots of ads, by donating as much as they damn please to various super PACs which buy airtime. So I'll just share this very briefly, and we'll cover it at length on another occasion. So what this says is, inside the Koch-backed effort to block the largest election reform bill in half a century, on a leaked conference call, leaders of dark money groups and an aide to Mitch McConnell expressed frustration with the popularity of the legislation, even amongst Republican voters. So Kyle McKenzie is the research director for the Koch-run advocacy group called Stand Together. And this call was made on January the 8th amongst conservative opponents of H.R. 1, which is short for House Resolution 1. So Republicans have denounced H.R. 1 as an unpopular partisan ploy. Ted Cruz has claimed that the proposal is a brazen and shameless power grab by Democrats. It's a proposal that seeks to expand voting rights and curb the influence of money in politics, and it would presumably overreach all of the actions taken by Republican states to restrict and obstruct voter access to voting. But they admit that the lesser-known provisions in the bill that limit secret campaign spending are overwhelmingly popular across the political spectrum. In private, this is the kicker, in private they concede that their own polling shows that no message they can devise effectively counters the argument that billionaires should be prevented from buying election outcomes. So what did they say? What did they say that they'd tried already? The speakers on the bill expressed alarm at the popularity. They said it was so popular that it wasn't worth trying to mount a public advocacy campaign to shift opinion. Instead, a senior Koch operative said that opponents would be better off ignoring the will of the American voters and trying to kill the bill in Congress. So just, pushing Republican senators to definitely vote against this popular bill. So they want to use under-the-dome type strategies, meaning legislative maneuvers beneath Congress's roof, such as the filibuster, to stop the bill, because turning public opinion against it would be incredibly difficult. He warned that the worst thing conservatives could do would be to try and engage with the other side on the argument that the legislation stops billionaires from buying elections. McKenzie admitted, unfortunately, we found that is a winning message for both the general public and also conservatives. He said that when his group tested tons of other arguments in support of the bill, the one condemning billionaires buying elections was the most persuasive. People found that to be most convincing, and it riled them up the most. McKenzie explained that the Koch-founded group had invested substantial resources to see if we could find any message that would activate and persuade conservatives on this issue. He related that an AOC message we tested, one claiming that the bill might help Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez achieve her goal of holding people in the Trump administration accountable by identifying big donors. That helped somewhat with conservatives, but McKenzie admitted the link was tenuous, since what she means by this is unclear. Sadly, he added, not even attaching the phrase cancel culture to the bill, portraying it as silencing conservative voices, had worked. It really ranked at the bottom, McKenzie said to the group. That was definitely a little concerning for us. So they are struggling to find any message that resonates with conservatives to bring them on board with the idea that dark money should end its reign of terror over the American political system. Sheldon says, since the public supports the bill, they will have to coerce and bribe the legislators. Yes, well, I think they are pretty good at trapping Republicans in a holding pattern about that, which indicates the rest of us have to get really loud about this bill. It's supported in the public. We're not going to be contributing to a ramping up of partisan sentiment. We're going to be potentially building coalitions with conservative voters who are worried about socialism, worried about everything, but who are also worried about billionaires having undue power. Paul notes that he and Rose are getting their first shots next Friday. That's fantastic, Paul. Congratulations. Interesting as well is how they seek to use AOC as a trigger for Republicans, that they hope that just by mentioning her name or saying this bill will help Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez achieve her goal of holding Trump donors accountable. They're trying to they're trying to rile people up by making them afraid that AOC is coming for you and she's going to criticize you for supporting Trump and donating to Trump. And that's why you should be worried, because you'll be silenced if this bill passes, this bill that seeks to limit how much influence billionaires are able to buy within American politics. So someone who is the senior vice president of communications for Stand Together declined to respond to questions about the conference call or the Koch group's research showing the robust popularity of the proposed election reforms. Well, I'm not surprised that she wouldn't respond to that call. You don't want to legitimize the dirt that your enemies have gained on you through whatever good-intentioned person, and I praise be for them, leaked the contents of that call to Jane Meyer of The New Yorker. So yes, that is my big deal of the day, which is to say supporting H.R. 1, popular bipartisan support, and it's what the Koch brothers, it's what the billionaire underminers of American democracy most fear, those theocratic fascists who are trying to rework American dynamics to increase the amount of feudal level of wealth hierarchies in the United States, that people who are poor have to stay poor, subsisting on $7 an hour wages when those levels of pay have stayed the same for a long time, even in the context of over time inflating costs of living, so that people have become trapped in a cycle of poverty where they barely have time to draw breath, can barely feed their family without the aid of food stamps, feel compelled to work multiple jobs just to be able to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. Those levels of self-perpetuating impoverishment are like a vice that much of the lower echelons of American society are trapped in. And it is to be hoped that Democrats will be able to help people break out of that by eventually passing higher minimum wage rates, whether that be, hello, somebody hiding? I felt like I heard one of my children. Yes, Sheldon raises the very important point, which is that Donald Trump scammed his base by putting in yellow tick boxes. Oh, you are there? I was. I knew I heard a little scampering.
You went on the other side.
This is my son. Do you want to say hi, Pumpkin? Just don't say your name. Just say hi.
Hello.
Are you adorable?
Yes.
Yes. This is my son. He is very smart and good at maths and reading. What else are you good at? Science?
Mm-hmm.
Being kind?
Mm-hmm. Soccer.
Soccer, yes. Good listening?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Or good making arguments and thinking of different perspectives.
Yes.
And what are you doing now? Are you dancing with your sister?
I'm building Lego with my dad. We're almost finished.
Oh, you're almost finished. When you're finished, should we go outside?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we will. All right. I'm just telling this what Donald Trump did. It was exposed in a paper yesterday that when people made a donation to him, they were like, oh, I heard on the radio that Trump really needs our money before the election. So we'll get together, we'll give him $500. And what they didn't realize was there was a little box that already had a tick in it Like if you untick the box, you could get out of it, but people didn't read the fine print. It was in tiny little letters, in big letters that said, "Thanks for being a patriot," and inside it said, "We're going to double your donation to celebrate Trump's birthday." So then, even if they're given like $500, the next day it charged them $500 again, and they kept charging them $500 for every week until people did things like cancel their credit cards or reported it. But a lot of the Trumpers, the Trump donating people who found out that they'd had their bank accounts emptied, they were still like, "Oh, we don't blame Donald Trump for it. We blame."
Can I go back to
Yeah, of course you can.
Bye-bye.
I turned
9 a few
Oh, look,
days
you
ago.
got a compliment, darling. Do you see what that says?
Thank you. Also, I had my birthday a few days ago.
No, you don't. Go. You don't tell the internet that.
Okay.
Yes, he is a handsome young man, and he did have his birthday at some point. He didn't see you, Christopher, say hi, buddy. I was just pointing to Paul, say handsome young man, but I will tell him also that you said hi. Yes, so that was me very quickly covering the fact, because I read the New York Times article, that they had experimented with the gullibility and exploitability of the Trump base by not only sending more and more emails with ratcheting up levels of intensity, saying America's in jeopardy, there's crisis after crisis, Trump desperately needs your money, or he won't succeed, and then America will be lost forever, and it will be your fault. They also had little yellow boxes with ticks in them that they initially had one line of distraction before the fine print of, yep, we're going to deduct another $100 on Trump's birthday, or we're going to double your deduction to help Trump some more. They started to put in nine lines of distraction reading, so that nobody started to read the little smaller print at the bottom saying, "We're going to take more money from you." You're by failing to uncheck this box, you are agreeing to a automatic opt-in system of we take your money from you. So they had to process, I think, 12% of donations as refunds after the election, and that's still probably a drop in the ocean of how many people just couldn't even be bothered to challenge it, or thought, "I'm not going to try and get my money back from Trump." But if we raise awareness of that, and we act laterally if we encounter Trump supporters by saying, "Oh no, we agree with you. Trump's so great. His whole organization is really good at understanding how best to take money from Trump supporters." That might be a good way of triggering something in Trump supporters that makes them go home and look up the reporting on that. So I'm trying to imagine ways I could fit that in with the conversation. Paul gave me a high five award. Thank you, Paul. Much obliged. Sheldon says several other Republicans are conducting the same scam. And I'm sure, why wouldn't you? If you have no principles and it's been demonstrated for you how to achieve a systematic squeezing of funds from your loyal base, people who are incapable of critically evaluating your party and its absent policy platform, or its covert policy platform of helping the Koch brothers get more and more influence over American life and basically continue the pattern of degrading and punishing low-income people in order to increase the convenience and ease with which Republican corporate donors can do whatever they like with their businesses, wind back environmental protection regulations, increase the amount of neurotoxins and carcinogens introduced into American water systems, all of these things. I mean, we're seeing now in Florida, which area is it? The Manatee area? One area where a phosphate factory has just been leaking and has released millions of tons of pollutants into the local bay. There's people who can't use their local drinking water. Look, Paul and Sheldon and Christopher are all saying hello to each other, which is lovely. Yes, I did say I was going to go though. So that was, you've now met my son as well as my daughter. They're both adorable. And I hear that the Lego building project has nearly come to an end. So was there any final point I wanted to make from the New Yorker article? What I will do is I will copy the link and paste it here, because I think it's important that I continue to promote it, that as many people as possible just familiarize themselves with it. If they can, usually get a couple of free articles a month for different publications. So even if you don't have a subscription to the New Yorker, try this link, or try to Google New Yorker Koch, K-O-C-H, Jane Meyer, and try and read this article once I've been able to load and link it, because I don't look to the Lincoln Project as much anymore, but it still is working. And there's the Republican Accountability Project as well. We win this thing when we are able to step outside the box of our own methods of being outraged. When we find people who are outliers, i.e. Republicans don't expect Republicans to be speaking out against Republicans. When you can break that chain, every instance in which you do that and you amplify that, you see it happen and you draw more attention to it with your actions, with your social media sharing, with your voice in conversations. You amplify our collective ability to erode margins of support for Republicans. And that is so key to keeping bad faith actors out of power, bad faith corporate stooges, donors, shills from diminishing the quality of life for Americans by in a zero-sum setting in which they increase their own personal wealth at the direct expense of others in the middle class and in the lower income classes. So the link is my most recent comment. I'll say thank you so much for listening, everybody. I hope it's been reasonably entertaining for you all today. My daughter's listening to a Disney song from the movie Moana, or a short that followed the movie Moana in cinemas. Well, that preceded Moana. It's called Lava, and it's about a volcano that falls in love, a volcano that's lonely and then falls in love with another volcano. Christopher says, take care. Thank you, Christopher. Have a good night's rest, everybody. Oh, it is Manatee Country. Very good. Manatee County in Central Florida that's currently suffering the effects of an under-regulated, under-audited phosphate factory. These are real life consequences for people occurring from Republican governance. Paul's been missing my broadcast and says, nice to see you again. Thank you, Paul. I'll try and step it up with the frequency and regularity of the broadcasts. Take care, everybody, and talk to you soon. Shalom, namaste. I need to collect some more, so it's more broadly international. What can I say? Shalom, namaste, arrivederci, konnichiwa, au revoir. That's all. That's all I've got, but I'll collect more. And I'm going to just foreground Paul's compliment for a bit, because why not? Celebrating compliments and celebrating the connections that we've made as audience and broadcaster through continuity of contact and through commonality of goals, that we've endured the wild ride of having a criminal self-serving despot in power for 4 years, and that he's out of office and the world has breathed a sigh of relief, but that there are Republicans still seeking to overthrow democracy in more subtle ways. Sheldon says imminent failure of a huge basin of industrial waste will be released from the phosphate. This is very tragic. Will be released from the phosphate mine. Senator Rick Scott, and who was formerly the governor of Florida, wasn't he? And current governor, Republican governor Ron DeSantis, did not enact any controls, and the result will be catastrophic indeed. So that's very unfortunate. Sheldon says, take care. Paul says, salute. What language is salute? Let's check. I can find out how to pronounce it as well. Salute. A gesture of respect. Oh, that's salute. That's all right. I'll learn another time. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care, and